Hello, hi. This video about to see is in two parts. Um, it's coming to the tail end of our interviews with the coaching staff of the Reggae Girlz, and it will be getting very interesting, and you would recognize that how much it entails to put a coaching staff together and all the different dimensions of coaching as it is today. And in saying that, I would ask you to take special notes if you're interested in coaching, if you're a player, if you're looking for scholarships or whatever. These are the things that and the people that you need to deal with and you would have to deal with to take your job and your status seriously.
Okay, so we had a gentleman here, a familiar gentleman from Toronto. Seen him here at the National Stadium in Jamaica. Could you tell the people your name and how you come by such a big accomplishment?
My name's Sanford Carabin. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I got involved with the Jamaica national team 2 years ago in December 2016. I believe it was with the under-20 national team that was involved with the CONCACAF qualifying in Honduras. And Hubert Busby, one of the assistant coaches, recommended that I come on. It was an element of the coaching staff that they wanted to sort of bring to the mix. And my role is advanced scouting, opposition analysis, and game day and match analysis for the players and the coaches. So been with them ever since. Obviously the last 12 months has been a little bit more hectic with qualifying last October and then all the camps this year, so it's been interesting and exciting.
Yeah, so I guess you'll be going to France with the team. You did some advance on Brazil. You have some serious work.
Yeah, I mean, part of my role is to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the teams we're going to face. So I've been watching their games since January. I've probably got about 7 or 8 games in total for each of our 3 group stage opponents going back to early January 2018. So we have a pretty good idea of how they play. Obviously we might incur some different tendencies through the actual World Cup, but my job is to put together a dossier on each of the teams, present it to the coaching staff, and from there they will develop a game plan on how they're going to attack each of the group stage opponents.
And you think we can, Jamaica can surprise the opponents thus far, or it'll be chalked up to a learning experience?
Well, the beauty of football is, it's 2 teams playing, anything can happen. I think, the team, the staff has put in a lot of hours on our opposition. I think we'll be ready. I don't doubt that. And on any given day, a little bit of lady luck will help us here and there. But yeah, I think we match up well with all 3 opponents. And I think the expectation is that we progress from our group. So keep our fingers crossed. We hope that happens.
All right. Thanks for the time.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Carvin.
Morning.
Yeah. How are you making out with the COVID-19? First I should ask you that.
Everything's okay. Thankfully nobody's been affected near me or in my inner circle. So, no, it's been okay. Busy times still. Even though we're not outside, we're still busy planning and organizing and preparing for when we do go back in. So, it's a busy time.
Okay, as mentioned, there's a follow-up conversation for the last one we had at the National Stadium in Jamaica.
Right.
All right. Since that time, I know that was the farewell game. How has it been going into? I know you guys met in. Did you go from there farewell game? Did you go the hub to Miami and then to Scotland? Did you do all the hubs?
Yeah, I was with the team once we left the National Stadium for the farewell game. I was with the team all the way through to the end of the World Cup for us. Yeah.
So, for ladies and gentlemen, for all intents and purposes, I know you're gonna see part one with him, but this is the I don't know if you get any additional responsibilities, but you the video analyzer, right?
Yeah, I mean the role is obviously always evolving. You know, my background is as a coach, not as an analyst to start with. You know, I've completed my A license in a couple countries and been coaching now for about 18 years. So when I transitioned into looking at the analysis about 10 years ago as part of my coaching evolution, you know, it was an area that Jamaica didn't do a lot of. And it happened to be sort of a skill set that I had developed. And, you know, when you're a coach and you transition into an analyst, it's much easier because obviously you're seeing the game from the same vantage point as the coaches because you
Yeah.
understand sort of how they're viewing a game. So you can analyze it. And I guess the same vocabulary as they look at it. So it was an easy transition. And you know, initially it was just breaking down games post game. Now it's evolved more into opposition scouting. So before we play a game, um, looking at the strength and weaknesses of our opponent, which in the World Cup, as you know, was Brazil, Italy, and Australia. So I think combined, each of those teams, I probably watched about 30 games, at least 10 for each team, going back to 2017.
Okay.
So, you know, sourcing those videos, making connections,
Yeah.
takes a bit of time.
Okay. So you full of the information, but that information has to be. I guess you go in a meeting, you do your strategy, your tactical things. It has to go into the players now, who has to implement from a strategy point of view to be aware of certain things that you discovered by showing them footages of what is required. So now that is already embedded in the team when you get to, I guess you didn't do much for the Scotland game. Did you do any
Actually,
research on the Scotland team?
yeah, we did a lot on the Scottish team, primarily because my background is Scottish. I know a lot of I know a lot of the people there, so we got a lot of their games. What we did in the World Cup, we did in our warm-up games, so it became a routine for the girls.
Okay.
So 2 days out of a game, we would do an opposition analysis in a team meeting. We call it match day -2. And then match day -1, which is the day before a game, or in some cases, it was the morning of the game, depending on the turnaround. We would look at specific things like set pieces and just a quick review of how we're going to set up from an attacking and a defending point of view. So we started that routine in our camps, even going back to, I think the first camp we did that routine was in February in Montego Bay
Yeah.
in Kingston when we played Chile. So by the time we got to the World Cup, the regular preparatory routine for the girls was they knew it. They knew what to expect.
Okay. So now seeing that they knew it, I mean your job isn't over, but you have your information. You could only get so much because the games are on you. Um, how you find they lost the Scotland game as far as Buzz was saying 3-2, right? I think they had the lead. He said something,
Correct.
they had the lead, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um, how you find from your scouting report, how you find how you break down that game in terms of the finality of the results and the performance based on your information.
Well, that particular game, I mean, with any team, My role is to look at what their strengths are, and what their weaknesses are, in the flow of the game, as well as some tendencies on all their set pieces. And for that information is relayed to the coaches. And then from there, as a collective, they will look at, okay, how can we marginalize or weaken their strengths or neutralize them? And how can we take advantage of their weaknesses?
You broke up Sanford, you broke up there when you say they would it's almost like it's they say the internet connection unstable. So hold on, based on the set pieces, you said they would what the coaches would do?
Yeah, so we take all that information that we gather, we give to the coaches staff, and from there they develop the strategy on how to approach the game. So they'll put together a game plan. With Scotland in particular, there was certain things in attack that we knew they would be strong in.
Yeah.
Primarily certain players that had, very good 1v1 abilities, very good vision. And we knew defensively where their weaknesses were. And I think for the most part, the biggest, I think, benefit for doing this for the girls is that it to some extent, it limits or reduces their level of anxiety when they start the game. They have an understanding of maybe the general team play. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a hard and fast science here. The coach of the opposition on the day we play them could decide to switch their formation and choose different players, which has happened to us. But all we can do is develop tendencies, and look at individuals, and we can maybe, for instance, we could say the right winger in a 4-3-3 has this ability, and if our left back matches up, we feel that she matches up well with her. How do we limit her strengths? Well, don't let her get on the outside and deliver crosses in. And that might be a game point we pass on to our player to say, your individual role today when you come up against this player in a defensive situation is push her inside to support. Don't let her get around us, because that's where her strength is. So
okay, so the question is how you find, based on your scouting report and the result of the game, what went well, and because there's a lot you can't control. You can only do so much. You're not playing the game, as you just mentioned, tactically the coach could lineup could change, like what happened with Brazil with Massa. So in talking to Buzz, he said, well, you guys prepared for whether she was in or out the lineup, which was good, and that means that you carrying a certain amount of expertise, right? So I just want a little quick wrap up before I go into the World Cup games. How at the end of the day, what you, from your point of view, not the coach's point of view, how do you respond to the game based on the information you put in, based on the coaches putting it to them, based on all the strategies you guys have? How you come away from a game after the final result in terms of whether it was implemented? In other words, what satisfaction you get from what you do based on the end of the game, whether it's a win or loss then?
Yeah, I mean, there's times when you might identify a weakness, and that becomes part of the team's game plan. And in the game, we actually take advantage of that weakness and get a goal scoring opportunity, or we actually score a goal. With Scotland, it happened with one of Bunny's goals. We knew that their two center backs were very good technically, but had limited recovery speed. So we knew that if Bunny could get in front of them, she could beat them to the goal. And as you recall, probably one of the goals she scored was, she just beat the central defender for pace. Possibly maybe not knowing that in advance, but he may not have accelerated past that center back thinking, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Maybe this won't work, but she probably went in and she's been told, look, you can beat her in a foot race. So if you get in behind her, don't slow down. So there are
good. So that is the anxiety you're talking about, that you can curb the anxiety.
Yeah. But then, as recently as the Canadian game, as much as all the prep we did for that, we didn't anticipate that two of their better players would not be in the starting lineup. And that took us by surprise. So sometimes you feel you've done the work and you kind of get it relatively accurate. And then there's times when
Yeah.
you just throw your hands up and go, well, couldn't have planned for that because there's no way we would have known that. So,
Okay, so now that we got the full picture of your job, how you already saw your methodology and everything else, the purpose of this now is to find out your thinking with the World Cup games because we're doing a magazine on the World Cup games. Brazil, based on your report, scouting report, we like to call it sometimes, marches out. Um, According to the coach whose interview is up on YouTube, you guys, prepared for her or with her in or out the lineup. So what was your whole thing? Again, I could only ask you because you already do your work going into even weeks, months ahead based on your files. What was your feeling after the Brazil game based on your scouting report, implementation? Because one of the things I would just bring it up to date with is the fact that the team gave up about 4 or 5 corner kicks to start the game. I was right there at the corner flag.
yeah.
How I mean, and for me who play the game, and I know you're coach too, sometimes you don't cater for that. That's just the way the ball roll.
Yeah, I mean, the Brazil game, to be honest with you, I thought we did a pretty good job preparing the girls for the game. Brazil didn't change the way they attacked. They attacked exactly how we thought they would. The biggest difference in that particular game was one player. Leading up to the Brazilian game, Christine, who was the striker, had not played for Brazil for 12 months, had not played one competitive game. There was no indication
I didn't even know that.
there was no indication she would start. She was an older player in her mid-30s. We always thought that Marta would be in there. Well, we're kind of leaning towards it, and then we made our adjustment when we started hearing rumors. But the one difference was Christine. She scored all 3 goals. So we didn't really plan on her being on the field because she had not kicked the ball for the national team in a competitive game for a year. It's not because she wasn't preferred. She was injured a lot. And she wasn't available for one reason or another. So, she scored all 3 goals against us. She dominated physically, which usually is our strength as 2 center backs. Usually our center backs dominate, but they're coming up against a very skillful, very savvy, very experienced striker, and that also had a physical presence, and that was the big difference in the game. How they attacked, how they defended, what flank they decided to go down more than others. We kind of knew what they would do, and they did do that. It's just when the ball got in the box, Christine was just different class, and she scored obviously a free kick.
Nice free kick too.
That it's you just got to hold your hand up and say, right, okay, that's world class. So I think going into that game, even when we left the game, I felt that we did a good job preparing the girls.
You did.
But on the day of the game, we couldn't execute offensively, and we had to deal with a player that we had not planned for that game. So.
Okay. I call it the team going flat. There's no way, and I try not to be as too critical, but I mean, right? I'm a little disappointed with the Italy game. So for you being analysis, I don't know what happened. I asked the manager, which is Miss Nelson, what happened. I'm trying to still investigate if something happened between that Grenoble to Reims, because that team was different playing Italy. So let me hear did your scouting report go as saying what you expected? It would be surprising. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you're trying to connect the end result of what eventually happened to the scouting report. A lot of times, it could be exactly as you intended, but on the day, the girls just didn't execute for one reason or another. So I think if you
That's
look
right.
at it and you
That's
say
right.
the scouting report doesn't guarantee a win, what it does do is it gives you a level of I guess understanding of how a team attacks and defends and what their tendencies are and who key players are and what their strengths and weaknesses are. It doesn't guarantee if you get a bang on scouting report that you're going to win the game. At the end of the day, the players play the game. They still have to execute. With Italy, again, there was no surprises in how they approached the game. Certainly not to the coaching staff. We knew we create a document called team personality for every team we play, and there's 5 elements to it. What their emphasis in attack, what their attitudes in possession are, how do they penetrate? Do they go centrally around us, over us? What their emphasis on defense is, and how do they mark? So we create a team personality, and how Italy played was exactly how we thought they would play. The one thing I will say is that there is a level of collective understanding in the Italy team that we did not anticipate, but we should have, primarily because a large number of the girls on the Italian team play on the same club, which is Juventus. I think half the team plays on one club team.
Mm-hmm.
So, just from a familiarity point of view,
Yeah,
from
chemistry.
a comfort level, from a team chemistry, absolutely, 100%. They knew each other. And, all the games I watched leading up Italy, I knew they were highly technical. I knew they had 2 center backs that could play and drive out a defense with the ball. They were great in 1v1 situations, great in the air, great tackling. They had a very young midfield that was mobile and could pass and had vision. So, they were a team from a technical point of view, we thought were right up there with Brazil. The girls in attack, they have some very good players, and we knew Italy was coming on over the last couple of years, having formed their pro league just a couple of years before. So there was no surprises to us in terms of how they were going to play the game. What we didn't expect was their level of effectiveness on the field. They were very efficient with the ball, highly technical. We just couldn't get close to them. I mean, we're quick, but we're not that quick. The ball moves a lot faster than our players.
Yeah, okay.
So, I think some of the stuff that we looked at as their attacking strengths, we just couldn't deal with on the day. It's not that the girls didn't know how to deal with it. They just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, and those things happen.
Yeah.
So now you get but you start moving back up again. You go into back to Grenoble, and let me ask you, it might be something, but you're going, there's a 12-man advantage in saying that works most of the time in sport. And I try to get from people, you move back from Rims now back to Grenoble. And I was trying to find out, is there a comfort zone going back to Grenoble? You're familiar with the place? We're talking psychologically now. Was there any psychological advantage or comfort in your mind going back to Grenoble? I think you didn't stay at the same hotel, if I remember correctly. Did you stay at the same hotel when you went back to Grenoble?
No, we stayed in a different hotel.
Oh, yeah, I just remembered that because I was thinking you went back to the same hotel. But the performance was different. Now the lapses was also different. I know in the Italy game, it's the same problems, but the defense was more stagnant in the last game against Australia, based on the goals that was scored again from set plays in the air. Even the rebound what's the name, mopped up, that came off the defender back to central in the middle of the goal with her. It's almost that rebound is almost an unawareness. It's almost like by the time the defender tried to react, the ball already hit her.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a certain amount of lethargic kind of unawareness, kind of not ready, you know. So how you attribute those type of errors, because you can't control that. That is not something you can control.
No, I mean, again, I think when you look at the game, obviously after, and you look at the goals that we conceded, the goals came from areas where we knew we would have a problem with. And with Australia in particular, they had changed their coach a few months before the World Cup. But having watched enough of their games, we knew that of the three teams, this was the one team that would use the wide areas and look to get crosses in much more. So the implication for us is we would need to deal with balls coming into the box and winning aerial battles. We knew that. We told the girls that. We showed video of it. Now, add on top of the fact that they have Sam Kerr, who arguably is the best player in the world at that time, and probably still is the most dangerous attacker. You know, you've always got that individual that can create something out of nothing. So, you know, I think at the end of that game, despite I would say, let's pull out the error that our goalkeeper made. But the other goals that were scored all came from wide areas. One was a set piece, obviously, and all came from not being able to deal with a ball being delivered from a wide area, which was something we had scouted, which is something we had communicated. And at the end of the day, you know, that's just a skill that on the day we weren't able to execute better than the opposition. And you know, to her credit, she still has to deal with those balls and put them away, and she did. So, you know, we had some chances. From a purely scouting point of view, it was none of the three teams we played in the World Cup did anything that we were surprised at.
Okay, so that's the conclusion. So was this the first time you did this analysis and prep scouting report for any club team or well, it's the first World Cup, I would say, right? That you do like world, you know, opposition players.
For the World Cup, at the World Cup level, yes, but I'd been doing this for Jamaica since 2018. And actually started in 2016 with the under-20s when they were in Honduras.
Male and female, both sides, or just?
No, just female. Just female.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but this was probably the most intense. Obviously, it's the World Cup. You know.
How was the experience for you? How was that experience for you? Did you gain something? Did you know?
Well, I mean, it was different. You know, you're talking about the top level of the game, and on game day, the technology that you have to communicate to the bench and to analyze in live action was new for me, because normally you're analyzing games after the game, watching a video or making your notes. But here we could do it live because we had feeds right into our computer. So that was new. It was good learning a new technology.
Did you have to do adjustments? Now you went in with your scouting reports on the three teams according to you, but is there any adjustment you have to make besides the on the fly? Like, okay, Marta missing, what's her name in Christina in? She started getting away, because if you notice, there's also a pattern where in the three games, players score multiple goals. And I know from playing the game, you know, very early you can tell on the opposition who can run, who can dribble, who holds on too long, if you're really trying to negate their being dangerous.
Mhm.
So are you in a position to help with adjustment on the fly, or strictly coaching staff?
I mean, during the World Cup, I was elevated in the stands in the analyst booths, so I had a different vantage point than coaches standing on field level. When
Mm-hmm.
you're a coach on field level, you're watching the game from a left to right or a right to left perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
you're physically static. You're standing there watching. So when you're a little higher up, you can see the vertical lines in the game and see where spaces are slightly different than when you're standing on field level.
Correct.
So from that perspective, I was able to maybe relay information in the game to say, look, there's a lot more space on the left side than I think you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a look at that. So I could just sort of pass on my visuals, and I was asked to look at a few things by Coach Hugh and Coach Busby and just point it out to them. So how
Good.
many times?
Was it so I guess the only time you can get injury time, you see the whole thing with soccer slash football, like basketball and some of these sports, we don't get timeouts. The timeouts we get is you could either orchestrate it by asking a player to go down, or you have to wait the injury of a player on the field of play, or a player substitution going in and passing a message on, or halftime. Normally, halftime is traditionally the time that you get to do your adjustment, traditionally. Because although you try on injury, sometimes the message is transformed or it's not implemented based on who the messenger is, because a player could go tell a player, but your coach is far from the bench and they just get the message and they do what they have to do until you chastise them at halftime. So did you come down from upstairs for the halftime or anything, or you stayed up and just do your communication?
No. I came down at every half. I had the game and I was pulling clips during live in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and then just before half, I would get a communication from the bench to say, pull the clips, and they were connected to an iPad. So whatever clips I had tagged in my computer automatically transferred to the iPad. So
Mm-hmm.
Coach Busby was in charge of the iPad on the bench, and he would say, what incident is the goal? And I would send them a link to say, this is the goal. So as soon as they went into the dressing room, we had a TV there, and we would plug the iPad in, and usually it was one, maybe two clips at the most. You don't have a lot of time at halftime. Girls have to collect themselves, so you can't go straight into analysis as soon as you walk in the dressing room. So the most you're going to have is maybe a minute or two. But then I would also communicate with Busby and say, look, we need to have a word with this girl because she's not playing her opposite number the proper way. It's clip 22, transition and attack, and he would pull it up on his iPad and he would look at it, go, okay, right, I'm going to show it to her. He would just pull the girl aside and show her individually.
Right.
So there was a collective. I don't think we ever got more than two clips because of the timing.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can imagine, you're going into halftime, all three games losing.
Yes.
You're trying to, at some point, maybe correct the one or two things that can give you a chance to get back in the game. And that's done very quickly between the coaching staff. And all I provide
you don't want to demoralize them either. You don't want to, because they knew they were going in as underdogs and stuff. So you just have to give them a quick correction. I understand. Yeah. So how so you do the adjustment. So now we get the adjustment within the game. How do you, even based on what you just said there, even without your technology, from since the old days, as I mentioned, we knew the dangerous players either by watching the league without the technology, by watching the teams be prior to, you know who's the dangerous player. All I'm saying is, based on even your technology, you just kind of know, well, we know Kerr was the dangerous player going in, right? The person that is assigned to, because as I said, you had multiple scorers in each one of the games. I think the Italy game, two of the girls scored two each in the Italy game. So
my thinking is, from the outside, being in the game all the time and being in competition, is that did anybody beside your assignment, because a person have to help the teammate too. Because you can say, you know, Stanford, you stay on Aldwyn, but Aldwyn might be having a good day that day. And Sanford might, you know, for some reason, not be having a good day. There's have good days too, be a little under your ability. That's where another teammate have to help out. And I'm saying, one of the things that's very obvious and glaring to me is multiple scores every game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with the best teams in the world, their best players rise to the occasion on the big stage. So it's, you know, Australia counts on Kerr to be scoring the majority of their goals. So it's not surprising she was on the end of all the goals. You know, she's always involved in the attack. With Brazil, obviously they're number 9. We didn't anticipate that, but again, it's not a surprise that their big players rise to the occasion. With us, it's just a matter of being able to deal with it. And you know, some of the girls, this is, all of the girls, it's their first World Cup. But for some of them, it would have been the first time they've come up against that level of a player. They're not, some of those top players are playing in the top leagues in the world. And, you know, besides Bunny right now, we don't have our players playing in those top leagues. So, you know, someone like Kerr, who's, whenever the ball goes out wide, she drops off the back shoulder of a center back and times her jump. So she's always got to run on a center back. Our defenders just don't have enough time on the pitch against that quality opposition to deal with it. So, you know, and we can't replicate that in training because we just don't have that level of player to go against them. So, you know, but these games are important for our players because, you know, one of the really good things I think the Reggae Girlz did at this World Cup is after every game, match day +1, we did a complete review of the game from a video point of view and to see how things lined up and where issues happened. And then we broke it into smaller groups with individuals. And almost every single girl was very, very open to going, okay, I know I did this wrong. What do I need to do to get better? Which from a coaching perspective, I think that's part of Coach Hugh and Coach Lorne and Busby and Price's philosophy that even though we made mistakes, if you're learning off those mistakes, we're going to get better. We just can't learn on the field. We just don't have enough quality games. We don't have enough quality camps to prepare for teams like Australia and Brazil who get together, you know, half a dozen times, maybe more a year, and we get together once or twice a year. So, you know, I think there's a lot of positives that came out of the World Cup. I think the girls competed very well. Just there's areas, it's experience. They just need experience playing against those top teams. And once we start to get more experience, then our natural benefits of athleticism and, you know, our speed, we can start to utilize those strengths more. And then teams will adjust to us.
So now you had a little premise in that statement you just make once we start to get better. So are you in this thing for the long haul? Are you still, Busby, I was told that everything is status quo until you hear differently or whatever. Obviously you had a coaching change with you and Donaldson. You're aware of that, correct?
Oh yeah.
All right. So putting that aside, so you're gonna be what you do in Toronto is are you sharing yourself, because even trying to contact you, realize you're a busy guy. How you sharing your workload? How are you making out?
Well, I run a club in Toronto. I run a national licensed club as the technical director.
Is that North Miss?
That's North Miss, yeah. So that's full time. I'm full-time technical director. And then on top of that, I mean, as you say, I'm involved. I'm in the program as long as they want me. You know, I think.
So you like it? You would like to continue?
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fully committed to helping move the program forward. You know, we don't get paid like coaches. We
Hmm.
do a lot of voluntary work, but that's okay because you know, I believe in the cause, and it's something that when you get to a certain stage of your life, you want to put time into things that you believe in, and this is definitely a project that I think Jamaica should be and can be the you know, in the top three in CONCACAF for everything when it comes to the female game.
Okay.
I'm hoping the men think that way, but I can't speak for them. But definitely on the female side, our ambition is to be the top three every time. And you know, there's a long way to go, but we're playing catch up to some of the bigger countries that have resources that Jamaica simply doesn't have, and probably will never have. So we have to find different ways
No, I
to make
think
it happen.
I think you're. I'm familiar with the competition. As I said, that was my third consecutive World Cup, and when I do the matchup and I look seriously, you're not far off. Is exactly what you just said there about the competition behind the games against good competition. They practice game the friendlies, and you know, it's kind of nice to know and to listen to a person like you because I did in my coaching career and stuff. You know, I didn't have the luxury of a Sanford, and you with your input and stuff, I find that's comforted for Coach Busby, and now to hear you say you're committed and finance, which is normally a stumbling block for most things staying together, is not an issue with you. So that's very good to hear. And so how's the club? Not Mrs. doing what now on the local scene? You you're in competition. Well, nothing's going on now, I understand. But what league are you in OPDL? Is there?
Yeah, so our club is what they call a national license club. There's just over, I think, 40 now across the country, which is the top level. So all the clubs are categorized into four different tiers. And
Okay.
the top tier is called the National License Club, of which we are part of that group, which means there's a certain level of standards that we have to have. There's programming that we have to deliver. Um, we have programming that starts from 3 years old all the way up to semi-pro. So we run a men's and a women's semi-pro team in League One. We have OPDL boys and girls, which is the high performance stream. We
Mm-hmm.
have a stream just below that, which is our competitive stream. And then just below that, we have what we call our recreational stream, which is the old house league model. Um,
Right.
so we have three specific player pathways within the club for three different levels of player. But we also have what I would call the so-called top of the pyramid for a youth club, which is semi-pro League One Ontario. And we run a men's and a women's team at that level as well. So
Do you have a team in that new league they formed? You have a team in that new.
no, that's the CPL. That's the
Yeah.
Canadian Professional League. The league,
How you looking at that? Can you
our
you
league
guys
is
looking at that?
our team at League One is one level below CPL. CPL is the professional league in
And
Canada.
is there a progression from League One to the CPL?
That's the natural progression. Last year was the first year. There was, I think, I heard the stat. There was about, I think, just under 30% of the players in year one came from League One. So it's the natural pathway for players now is in Canada is through the youth club, a high performance youth club, through to League One, then to CPL. Some do different routes. They might jump to university soccer in the States or Canada and then come back to CPL. Some may go overseas at a young age and come back, but the pathway now is fairly clear. It's still early days. It's the first year of the league. But just I
You're
think
familiar? You're familiar, and how is it working? You had
yeah,
any
it's
chance
good.
of watching the CPL and
Yeah, a lot
how's
of my ex-players are in the league. A lot of players I've coached, a lot of players I used to represent are in that league. So I know, and I know all the coaches fairly well. barring a couple out west that I don't have personal relationships with. But the level is good. The level will get better over time, and it's the right thing. I think probably in the last 10 years, it's one of the better things that's happened to soccer in the country.
Yeah, because those guys, Brennan and these guys have been getting literature. They've been inviting me out, but I normally like to wait, so I like to hear from you. So now maybe I'll, whenever they do come back on stream, maybe I'll go and take a look at it now that you say the level is good and stuff, But structurally, you think it's needed?
Yeah, it definitely is. There's, I think just 2 days ago, a player that played in the league for the York 9 franchise transferred to the Dutch top division, Den Haag. And he's a 21-year-old that also played for North Mist 2 years ago in League One. So he's the first, I would say, he's the second transfer for the league, but the first one to go to a top European league. And it's a young man from Mississauga area, Emilio Estevez, a midfielder. At the end of the year, the MVP of the league, Tristan Borg, made a transfer to a team in Belgium, which was in the second division, I believe. So it is also not only a pathway for players to get into a professional environment, it's also a springboard to bigger things.
Good.
And that's just a natural evolution. There'll be more players in the future that will do that.
That is good. That's good news. I'm glad you're giving me a little incentive to go back and take a look to see how this thing progressing. All right, let me ask you culturally now. I mean, you're Canadian, so how are you adjusting to the Jamaican culture?
My parents, when they immigrated from the UK, we moved into an area of Toronto that had a very large Jamaican population. So since I was a kid, I grew up in that group of players. I played in leagues and as a youth player. I had friends in school. They were all Jamaican. So, I would say probably in my mid-teens, I could understand a Jamaican just as well as a Canadian with their accent. I understand it, and it's obviously helped me dealing with some of the coaches. I mean, when you get into ones that speak really, really quick, it can be a bit daunting, but and Coach Busby and I grew up in the same area, so I've known him for quite a long time. So yeah, it's nothing new to me. I mean, it really isn't sort of much of a stretch for me. I understand fairly well.
And you mentioned about playing too. You were a player. You played the game, right?
Yeah. I played all growing up through youth teams. Some of those clubs are no longer around, but went on to play at university and college for many years, and played.
Which university?
Played at the University of Windsor.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never made it to the professional level. I think back then I honestly didn't really think it would be possible. So I don't even ever recall it being a goal of mine. It was just, I always played because I enjoyed playing. And if I got, some scholarship money out of it, I would be happy, which is what happened. But,
wait. So when you said that's what happened, is a sport, you got a scholarship through the football or sport or?
Well, back then it wasn't allowed to be scholarships in Canada, but you got what we called honorariums. So I got it called as an academic all-Canadian. So it was a combined academics sort of sport.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it was called a stipend back there or an honorarium, but it definitely helped with my graduate school.
Okay, but Sanford, you just seem so kind of cool and laid back. I can't even believe you played the game. Do you do the men's thing too? You say you do both. What's the difference?
Actually, I'm not involved with the men's program.
I'm talking about in North Miss.
Oh yeah. So
what's the differences you find in the two areas, men's and women's, or is there any?
Well, obviously, the women's game is evolving at a much faster rate than the men's game. It's obviously just this last World Cup, you saw how countries like Italy, Spain, have just like flourished in the last 4 or 5 years. From the youth level, you know, I think in Ontario, we've got a close to a 50-50 split between boys and girls playing the game, which is a very healthy balance. But, you know, the game gets better all the time. The girls get more technical. There's more girls committing to soccer at a high performance level. There's not as much of a dropout rate. A lot of that has to do with the new way soccer is structured at high performance. Better coaches, better facilities, year-round programming, better competition. So it's all kind of leading towards, you know, the game naturally evolving on the female side. There are some hiccups. Don't get me wrong. There are some hiccups. But, you know, I will tell you that, you know, I think, you know, the players coming into the game in Canada, the one area that could be improved is the creativity, the individual skills. We're just a bit too regimented, in my opinion, just my opinion. Whereas you get a girl from Jamaica who is just a free-flowing technical player, you know, they need the work on the structure size, whereas we need to start developing more players that have a creative ability to their game. And I think that's both on the men's and the women's side. Better crop of young men coming through, but certainly on the girls' side, there's very few females at the national level, even in Canada, that you would say are a threat 1v1 like Bunny Shaw.
That's right.
There's nobody.
And as you mentioned that now, let's see if you have it. Because as I say, I've been covering the women's game at the highest level for a while. If you had to rank Khadijah, take your time. We'll rank now. It's a serious question. We'll rank now. And I can do it, but let me see if you can do it. You just talk about technique and stuff. Where would you rank her? First 50, first 20, first 10?
I would say top 25, in my opinion, but has potential to be top 5 in the world. Her next step needs to be to the top club. The club she's at now, she's doing well. It's in a good league, but she's the best player on the team. In my opinion, if she goes to a club where she's not initially the best player on the team, that will push her beyond her ability. But in my opinion, she has the potential to be top 5 in the world. There's very few players that have her. I mean, I'm not even going to talk technique or physical part. Between the ears, she's at a different level for most female players. She sees the game in a fraction of a second faster than everybody else. And I'm a big fan of players that are good in the brain. So she's got a trajectory that can just escalate. But, you know, she's just obviously got to be playing against better players to push herself all the time. And she's young. She's got lots of time to do that.
Yeah. San, I want to thank you for giving me the time. You know, I wish you all the best, and I hope you stay with the Reggae Girlz program.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Wish you all the best as well.
All right. Okay. Thanks, man, and take care.
All right. Take care. You too.
All right.
Ciao, ciao.